My name is Daniel Harrison, and at 28 years old, I learned that buying your father's company is the most expensive way to prove a point. But sometimes, vindication has no price tag. My brother Michael and I graduated from university on the same spring day in 2019. We walked across that stage within minutes of each other, him with his business administration degree, me with computer science, summa cum laude. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd actually finished my program 6 months early, but waited to graduate with Michael because family should celebrate together, as Mum put it. The celebration dinner that night should have been about both of us. Instead, it became the moment that defined the next 5 years of my life. Dad raised his glass at the head of our dining room table, the same spot where he'd held court during my childhood, dispensing wisdom and judgment in equal measure. "To Michael," he announced, "will be joining Harrison Construction as Director of Business Development on Monday morning." The words hit like a physical blow. I set down my fork, the pasta suddenly tasteless in my mouth. "What about me?" Dad barely glanced in my direction. "Danny, you're brilliant with computers, but that's not real business. Michael understands construction, understands people. He's more perspective for what we're building here." More perspective. The phrase that would echo in my head for years to come. "I have a double major in computer science and business," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "My GPA was higher. I won the entrepreneurship competition junior year. Playing with apps and websites," Dad waved dismissively. "Michael has the vision for serious enterprise. Harrison Construction has been in this family for 2 generations. It needs someone who understands legacy." Michael, to his credit, looked uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to decline the offer. "There's a position in our IT department," Dad continued, cutting into his steak with surgical precision. "Junior level, but you could learn the business from the ground up. 28,000 to start." 28,000. Michael's starting salary, which I'd overheard Dad discussing on the phone, was 65,000 plus bonuses. "I already have a job offer," I said quietly. "Software engineer at Datacore Systems. 75,000. "That's fine for now," Mum interjected, her voice bright with forced enthusiasm. "You can always come back to the family business when you're ready to settle down." Ready to settle down. As if working for a Fortune 500 tech company was a phase I'd grow out of. I looked around the table at my family. Dad already discussing expansion plans with Michael. Mom clearing dishes as if the conversation was over. My younger sister Sarah scrolling through her phone, bored by the whole affair. In that moment, I realized something that changed everything. I was already an outsider in my own family. The pattern had been there all along, but I'd been too close to see it clearly. Growing up, Michael had been the one Dad took to construction sites on weekends, while I stayed home reading programming books. When I built my first app at 16, a simple inventory management system that I sold to 3 local businesses for $1,000 each, Dad's response was, "That's nice, but real business happens in the real world." When Michael got a C in calculus, Dad hired him a tutor. When I needed a new laptop for my computer science coursework, I was told to make do with the family desktop. Michael played varsity soccer. Dad never missed a game. I led the robotics team to state championships. Dad had client meetings. The favoritism had always been there, subtle but constant, like background radiation slowly poisoning the atmosphere. But this was different. This was Dad explicitly stating that despite my superior academic performance, despite my demonstrable skills in what was rapidly becoming the backbone of modern business, I was worth less than half of what Michael was worth. "You know what?" I said, standing up from the table. "You're right, Dad. I'm not ready for the family business. I'm going to Datacore." "Don't be dramatic," Dad replied without looking up from his conversation with Michael about client acquisition strategies. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being practical. You want to invest in the prospective candidate? Go ahead. But don't expect me to be grateful for scraps." I walked out of that house with my diploma and my wounded pride, but also with something else. Absolute clarity about what I needed to do. The drive to my apartment was a blur of suburban streets and racing thoughts. 5 years at university, 4 summers of internships, a thesis on machine learning applications in project management that my advisor called groundbreaking, None of it mattered to the man whose approval I'd spent my entire life seeking. That night, I sat in my sparse one-bedroom apartment, furnished with hand-me-downs and IKEA basics, and made a list on my laptop. Not a list of grievances or hurt feelings, but a business plan. If Dad thought I lacked vision for real business, I'd show him what vision looked like. I opened my banking app and stared at the number, $12,847.32. My life savings, accumulated through part-time jobs and careful budgeting. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then I opened a new document and typed, PropTech Solutions, revolutionizing construction through technology. If my father wanted to see real business, I'd give him real business. And if he thought Michael was more perspective, I'd prove that perspective was just another word for limited imagination. What Dad didn't understand, what he couldn't understand, was that the real world he kept talking about was changing. Construction wasn't just about hard hats and blueprints anymore. It was about efficiency algorithms, predictive maintenance, automated project management, and supply chain optimization. I understood that world better than anyone in my family. I understood it better than Dad, better than Michael, better than anyone at Harrison Construction. And in 5 years, when my vision became reality, they'd understand just how expensive their lack of faith had been. The next morning, I called DataCore and accepted their offer. Not because I needed a safety net, but because I needed a platform. Every line of code I wrote, every project I managed, every skill I developed would be an investment in the future I was going to build. A future where more perspective would be redefined by the son who was supposedly unworthy of investment. The first year at DataCore was boot camp disguised as employment. I worked 14-hour days, not because I had to, but because I was possessed by a vision only I could see. While my colleagues went home to Netflix and weekend plans, I stayed in the office, building the foundation of what would become my empire. My manager, Jennifer Chen, noticed immediately. "You know we don't require overtime, right?" she asked one Thursday evening, as I debugged code that could have waited until morning. "I'm not doing overtime," I replied, eyes still fixed on my screen. "I'm doing research." She was right to be curious. Every project I touched, I approached from a construction industry angle. When DataCore landed a contract to build inventory management software for a retail chain, I studied supply chain optimization in construction. When we developed a customer relationship management system, I researched client acquisition patterns in the building trades. My obsession wasn't random. Every night after work, I spent 3 hours building my own application, a comprehensive project management platform specifically designed for construction companies. Not the clunky, outdated systems that Dad's generation tolerated, but something elegant, intuitive, and powerful. Meanwhile, Michael was settling into his role at Harrison Construction with the comfort of someone who'd never questioned whether he deserved his position. Through occasional family dinners and Sarah's social media posts, I tracked his progress, client meetings, project launches, the gradual expansion of his responsibilities. "Danny's doing well too," Mum would say during our monthly phone calls, as if my success was an afterthought. "He got promoted to senior developer." What she didn't mention, because I didn't tell them, was that my promotion came with equity options, or that 3 headhunters were calling me every week, or that the construction app I was building in my spare time had attracted the attention of 2 angel investors. By year 2, my side project had evolved into PropTech Solutions, a legitimate startup with $200,000 in seed funding and 2 part-time developers working under me. We operated out of a shared workspace in downtown Austin, the kind of environment Dad would dismiss as playing office. The breakthrough came during year 3. Harrison Construction, along with hundreds of other mid-sized contractors, was struggling with project delays and cost overruns. Dad had mentioned this during one of Sarah's birthday dinners, complaining about clients who changed specifications mid-project and suppliers who couldn't deliver materials on schedule. "It's just the nature of the business," he'd said with resignation. "Too many moving parts, too many variables." I'd listened in silence, knowing that every problem he described was exactly what PropTech Solutions was designed to solve. But I didn't offer help. Let him figure it out on his own. Instead, I focused on companies that were ready to embrace change. Our platform integrated with suppliers' inventory systems, used machine learning to predict potential delays, and provided real-time project tracking that clients could access from their phones. We weren't just digitizing construction management, we were revolutionizing it. The first major client signed a $50,000 annual contract, then another, then 5 more. "You're on to something big," said Marcus Webb, our lead investor, during a quarterly review meeting. "The construction industry has been resistant to technology adoption, but the companies that embrace your platform are seeing 30% efficiency improvements. That's game-changing." Game-changing. The word Dad had never used to describe anything I'd accomplished. By year 4, PropTech Solutions employed 15 people and managed projects worth over $100 million annually. I'd moved from the shared workspace to a proper office, from a hand-me-down laptop to a custom development setup that cost more than my first car. More importantly, I'd caught the attention of Redwood Capital, a private equity firm that specialized in tech acquisitions. Their preliminary offer was staggering: $50 million for an 80% stake in the company, with the option for me to maintain operational control and earn additional equity through performance milestones. "You've built something remarkable," said Patricia Redwood during our first meeting. "A scalable solution to an industry-wide problem, the kind of innovation that creates market leaders." Innovation, market leaders, the language of real business. But the acquisition talks gave me a different idea. Instead of selling to Redwood, what if I used their interest to secure a loan? What if I leveraged PropTech's success to acquire something else, something like Harrison Construction? I spent weeks analyzing Dad's company from the outside. Public records showed annual revenues around $15 million, but profit margins that suggested inefficiency. Employee turnover was high, client retention was average, the kind of mid-size contractor that was either going to modernize or get squeezed out by more efficient competitors. "You want to acquire a construction company?" Marcus asked when I pitched the idea. "That seems personal." "It's strategic," I replied, which was true enough. "Vertical integration. We control the software and the implementation. Plus, Harrison Construction has established client relationships and a solid reputation. With PropTech's systems, we could triple their efficiency within 2 years." What I didn't mention was that I'd run the numbers on Harrison Construction's valuation. Based on their revenues, debt structure, and market position, the company was worth approximately $12 million. With PropTech's success and the right financing, that acquisition was entirely feasible. I thought about that $28,000 offer every day, about being told I wasn't perspective enough for real business, about watching Michael inherit opportunities I'd had to create for myself. Some people say success is the best revenge, but I was discovering that acquisition might be even better. The final piece fell into place when I learned about Harrison Construction's expansion plans. They were bidding on a major municipal project, the kind of contract that could set the company up for years, or bankrupt them if they mismanaged it. "Michael's really stepped up," Dad had mentioned during Christmas dinner. "This project could put us in a whole new category." I nodded politely and said nothing. But I was thinking about how PropTech's project management systems could ensure that contract's success, about how the son who wasn't ready for real business might soon be in a position to teach his family what real business actually looked like. Some lessons are worth $50 million to deliver. The call from Michael came on a Tuesday morning in March, just as I was reviewing the final acquisition documents with my legal team. "Danny, I know we don't talk much about business stuff, but I wanted to invite you to something special," he said, his voice carrying that familiar tone of casual privilege. I'm getting promoted to Executive Vice President next Friday. Dad's throwing a celebration dinner. The whole family will be there, plus some of our key clients and partners. Executive Vice President. I couldn't help but smile at the timing. That's fantastic, Michael. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. I know things have been weird between us since graduation, but you're my brother. I'd really like you to be there. Weird. As if systematic family favoritism was just a minor social awkwardness we'd eventually laugh about. I'll be there, I said. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The celebration was held at the Driskill Hotel, Austin's premier venue for corporate events. Dad had spared no expense. Crystal chandeliers, 5-course dinner, an open bar that probably cost more than my first year's salary at Datacorp. The guest list read like a who's who of Central Texas construction, contractors, suppliers, city officials, and business leaders who'd known my family for decades. I arrived fashionably late, wearing a custom suit that cost more than Michael's monthly salary, but looked understated enough not to draw attention. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was probably the wealthiest person in the room, yet still seen as the underachieving son who'd chosen computers over construction. "Danny!" Mum embraced me warmly. "You look wonderful. How's the computer work going?" "Very well," I replied. "Actually, I have some exciting news to share later." Dad was holding court near the bar, regaling a group of clients with stories about Michael's leadership on recent projects. He acknowledged me with a nod and a brief handshake before returning to his conversation. Same pattern as always. Polite recognition, minimal engagement, quick dismissal. Michael gave a speech about family legacy and the future of Harrison Construction. He thanked Dad for his mentorship, Mom for her support, and everyone who believed in our vision. He didn't mention me, but then again, why would he? In his world, I was still the little brother who'd chosen a different path. The speech was well delivered and appropriately humble. Michael had grown into his role, developed genuine leadership skills, and earned the respect of his peers. Under different circumstances, I might have been proud of him. As the applause died down and guests returned to their conversations, I noticed a familiar figure near the hotel's entrance, Patricia Redwood, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits and carrying a leather portfolio that I recognized. Right on schedule. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, tapping my wine glass with a fork. The room gradually quieted as conversations paused and attention shifted toward me. If I could have everyone's attention for just a moment. Dad looked confused. Mom smiled expectantly. Michael glanced between me and Patricia's legal team with growing uncertainty. "First, I want to congratulate my brother on his well-deserved promotion to Executive Vice President," I began. "Michael has shown real leadership and dedication to Harrison Construction. Tonight is absolutely his night to celebrate."
Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Several guests raised their glasses. "However, I also have an announcement that I think will interest everyone here, particularly those of you who've worked with Harrison Construction over the years." Patricia approached the front of the room, portfolio in hand. The executives flanking her positioned themselves with practiced precision. "Some of you know that I've spent the last 5 years building a technology company called PropTech Solutions. What you might not know is that as of this afternoon, PropTech Solutions has acquired Harrison Construction for $45 million. The silence was deafening. I watched the color drain from Dad's face, saw Michael's mouth literally fall open, noticed several clients exchange confused glances. The acquisition was completed through a combination of PropTech's equity value and strategic financing, I continued calmly. All existing contracts will be honored, all employee positions will be maintained, and all current projects will continue without interruption. Patricia stepped forward and handed me a folder. "The legal documentation is complete," she announced to the room. "Mr. Daniel Harrison is now the majority owner of Harrison Construction, with PropTech Solutions serving as the parent company." Dad found his voice first. This is impossible. The company isn't for sale. I never agreed to any acquisition. Actually, I replied, opening the folder and extracting a document. You've been trying to secure expansion capital for the municipal contract bid. When your bank declined the loan application, you reached out to several private investors. One of those investors was Tech Capital Ventures. I paused to let that sink in. What you didn't realize is that Tech Capital Ventures is a subsidiary of PropTech Solutions. We've been your silent partner for 6 months, providing the bridge financing that kept the company operational while you pursued the municipal contract. Bridge financing? Michael asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The $2.3 million that allowed you to hire additional crews, purchase new equipment, and maintain cash flow during the bidding process, I explained. That money came from PropTech Solutions, secured against Harrison Construction's assets and future revenues. Dad's face had gone from pale to red. You manipulated us. You deliberately deceived your own family. I provided capital when you needed it, I corrected. The terms were clearly outlined in the documentation your CFO signed. PropTech Solutions now holds controlling interest in Harrison Construction, and as CEO of PropTech Solutions, I am now your employer. The room was silent, except for the soft sound of Patricia's team distributing copies of the acquisition documents to key stakeholders. So, I continued, looking directly at Dad. To answer your question from 5 years ago about whether I was ready for real business, yes, I was ready. Ready enough to build a company from nothing. Ready enough to revolutionize an entire industry. And ready enough to acquire the family business that supposedly needed someone more perspective. Michael stepped forward, his expression a mixture of shock and something that might have been respect. Danny, I had no idea you'd built something this significant. You never asked, I replied simply. None of you ever asked. What happens now? Dad's voice was quiet, defeated. I handed him another document. This outlines the integration plan. Harrison Construction will be rebranded as Harrison PropTech Construction Solutions. Michael will remain as Executive Vice President, reporting to me. You'll retain your position as President of Operations, also reporting to me. Within 18 months, we'll implement PropTech's project management systems across all operations. I paused, meeting his eyes for the first time that evening. Based on preliminary analysis, these systems should increase operational efficiency by 35% and profit margins by approximately 40%. The company you built will be more successful than ever. The only difference is that it will be run by the son you thought wasn't perspective enough to handle real business. The words hung in the air, like a challenge. Around us, clients and partners absorbed the implications of what they'd just witnessed. Dad, I continued, my voice softer now. You asked me once if I was ready to settle down and join the family business. The answer is yes. I'm ready to settle down as the owner of the family business. Patricia approached with the final signature page. Mr. Harrison, this formalizes your transition from owner to employee. Your compensation package includes a significant salary increase and equity participation in PropTech Solutions. You'll be substantially better off financially than you were this morning. Dad stared at the document for a long moment before signing it. His handwriting was shaky, but the signature was legal. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced to the room, Harrison PropTech Construction Solutions is now operational. We're committed to maintaining every relationship Harrison Construction has built while bringing cutting-edge technology to every project we manage. Thank you for your continued partnership. As conversations slowly resumed and the legal formalities concluded, Michael approached me privately. How long have you been planning this? He asked. 5 years, I replied honestly. Since the night Dad told me I wasn't perspective enough for the family business. Michael nodded slowly. And you never said anything. Never asked for help, never complained, never tried to change his mind. Would it have mattered? Probably not, he admitted. Danny, I'm sorry. I knew the favoritism was unfair, but I never spoke up. I enjoyed the advantages without questioning whether I deserved them. You deserved them, I said, surprising myself with the honesty. You're a good leader, Michael. You understand people and projects in ways that I'm still learning. The difference is that now your skills will be supported by systems that work. And you're my boss. I'm your older brother, I corrected. I always was. Dad just forgot that for a while. 6 months later, Harrison PropTech Construction Solutions won the municipal contract that Dad had been pursuing. Our integrated systems reduced project timelines by 22% and came in $1.8 million under budget. The client was so impressed that they recommended us for 3 additional projects. More importantly, I established the Harrison Family Foundation for young entrepreneurs, providing seed capital and mentorship for technology startups founded by people whose families didn't believe in their potential. The first grant went to Maria Santos, a young woman whose immigrant parents wanted her to be a doctor, but who had developed an innovative agricultural technology platform. Her family attended the awards ceremony, beaming with pride as their daughter received $50,000 to launch her company. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving your family wrong. Sometimes it's proving them right about things they never knew they were wrong about in the first place. Dad and I have dinner once a month now. We talk about business, about technology, about the future of construction. He asks for my advice on projects and listens carefully to my answers. It's not the relationship we had when I was growing up, but it's better. It's built on mutual respect rather than conditional approval. You know, he said during our most recent conversation, I was wrong about technology not being real business. I was wrong about a lot of things. You weren't wrong about everything, I replied. You built a solid company with good people and strong relationships. I just gave it better tools. And you bought it out from under me, he added, with something that might have been pride. I bought it to save it, I corrected, and to prove a point. What point was that? I smiled, thinking about that graduation dinner 5 years ago, about the boy who was told he wasn't perspective enough for real business. That perspective isn't about seeing what already exists, I said. It's about seeing what's possible. These days, Harrison PropTech Construction Solutions employs over 200 people and manages projects worth more than $100 million annually. Michael was promoted to president last month. Dad finally retired to spend more time with Mum and his grandchildren. And me, I'm still the same person who built an app in his spare time because he believed technology could make construction better. The only difference is that now, when I tell my family about my vision for the future, they listen. Sometimes that's all a son really wants. Not just success, but the recognition that his success was worth believing in all along.